KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tateosian, 90.7 KFSR.
Welcome to another edition of the Central Valley Ledger. We're recording out of the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative, Fresno and Clovis. So today's guest is someone not new to the studio, someone not new to cameras. Kristine Walter, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Sevag. This is a great pleasure to be here after all these years.
So I am laughing because I remember watching your show, a very similar show to this, at Comcast, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, actually. So I'm flattered that you remember that show. It was just a great opportunity. So it was a show called Comcast Newsmakers. When Comcast came into this market, this was a show that they wanted to bring. It's what they did on the East Coast. And it was just a 5-minute show as opposed to a longer format that you're doing. It was at the top of headline news. But I was interviewing very much the same kind of people that you are, and that is, you know, the people and the projects and the different organizations that make our valley so great.
How exciting is learning about all this cool stuff happening? Because,
Right?
you know, we have a team here of volunteers that make this show happen.
Yeah.
And they're in the studio making us look and sound good. And we love learning about things. Like, we get guests sometimes that say things that, like, wow, we didn't even know that.
Well, I hope to surprise you about a few things as well. But, you know, I think that is one of the things that makes CMAC so amazing, is that you have some really talented people here who are just committed to making television interesting and fun and accessible for everybody. And I think that is such a great opportunity. And it's a beautiful studio. You're really lucky.
So here we are. There's a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I love that you practically know everybody, because we were in the studio, we were outside the studio, and you were talking to one of my other guests. And so I love that you know everybody, because I see you out and about.
You're kind.
So you have a couple of titles, but right now you have a consulting type organization you're working with?
Well, first of all, I have a business that is a consulting business, and it's called Wheelhouse Strategies.
Wheelhouse Strategies.
Yes, which I started back in 2010, and it was really about networking people together and providing some fundraising and event planning services, you know, for various projects. And I've been so blessed, Sevag. I've had the chance to work on some really, really great things in our community, and makes me feel like a little bit of a cheerleader.
So what, if I needed, where would you fit? If I said, I'm a part of an organization,
Okay.
when would I call you to say, Kristine, I need you? What could you help with?
Well, okay, so if you called me, it would really depend on what you were trying to do. So some of the things that I am working on, and actually I am working on a project right now that I would love sometime to perhaps come back and share more with your audience, but I'm working on a project with community colleges and school districts in our region called the Central Valley Promise, which is really about providing educational opportunities for students to get through community college in a feasible length of time. But maybe another show.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
But when you would call me would be, for instance, if you were trying to launch a new idea, or if you were trying to raise money, or if you were going to put on an event, you know, I would be that sounding board, and depending on the level of what was happening. I love to brainstorm with people, and the thing that I love doing more than anything else is connecting people with others that may not know, but they really should know in order to make their project or their idea come to fruition.
So I imagine all the years in the community, your involvement in the community, it helps people in this way, because I bet you during your brainstorming session, you bring up things that they really haven't thought about.
Yes, well, that could be, I don't know, but I think that people really do want to find ways to connect with others, and so that's one of the things that I love doing. And so, and you, in this show and in this format, you're doing the same thing, and you're building a vast network, and you're going to be able to provide people with that same kind of insight.
And I think my favorite part of that is there are people who aren't out in the major media. They don't have the budget to go out there and say, here's what I'm doing. we bring them on and we chat with them, and some interesting information comes out and that we get all excited about. Let's talk about access to river.
Right. Okay.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you here, because I've been following, and I want you to talk about both sides of the argument. What's going on with the river access?
Well, okay, so first of all, it's a complicated issue, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it is a complicated issue. It's been going on for a very long time. And my role in that, just to be clear, is not as a consultant. I'm a neighbor. And I'm part of a coalition, a group of neighbors and other stakeholders looking to try to find ways and provide resources to create access. So it's hard to know where to start, but let me just say that this idea of creating a recreational amenity at the San Joaquin River has been a vision for many people for a long, long time.
Okay, and I want to stop you there. I apologize if I stop you in our interview.
You can stop me anytime you want.
Because you've triggered some things in the conversation. So it's been in the news lately more than before, but from what I'm hearing from you is this is not something that just happened a few years ago. It's been going on for a while.
Yes, it has. And of course, it sort of starts and stops because there's a lot of government process that happens in the meantime, like environmental reviews, and that takes a long time. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of things in the news, and that kind of goes underground for a while, and then it comes back up. And right now, we're at a point where there has been a lot of effort that has been done over the last year that's been presented and has, I think that that's what's been in the news recently, and that is probably what prompted you to come in.
Yes, because I read some articles that there were for and against. So I want to get into that because first let's talk about what area we're talking about. Palm and like Knees area, right?
Right.
And extends to where?
So the project is called River West Fresno, and it's about 3.5 miles thereabouts. It's sort of envisioned from the 41 Bridge over to the Palm and Knees area.
And there's that's connected by a river.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's the San Joaquin River runs there. This is just one piece of a much larger trail system that is envisioned. The entire trail system is envisioned to be, I think, about 22 miles. So this is just the first segment.
Okay.
And it comes as an extension to the Lewis Eaton Trail out of Woodward Park.
Okay.
And so that's the segment we're talking about.
So are there properties then aligned next to the area that we're talking about?
Sure. So this project is actually on the border of both Fresno County and also Madera County.
Okay.
So Madera County has their own issues, but Madera County and that region isn't as fully developed as the Fresno side.
Okay, so not as many houses.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
And so they have an opportunity to really design this. As I said, it goes back to the 80s when all of this kind of started. So I don't want to take up so much time, but we can go back and visit it anytime you want. But what has happened is that this first segment was designed, and it was envisioned that there would be access points, of course, because you have to be able to access this river in order to design it, and there were trails.
And so the river itself, we're talking public property or we're talking private property?
We're talking public property.
Okay.
So what happened is that the state formed a conservancy board. On the conservancy board, there are representatives that are local elected leaders and citizens, and also state agencies and their department heads. And they've come together and they have formed this conservancy. And they were given money, public money, to buy property from willing sellers.
Willing sellers,
Willing sellers, okay. And so they've been buying some property, but there was no money in this covenant, this agreement that the state set up for operation and maintenance money.
Oh, I got you.
So you really can't build anything yet until you can find a operations and maintenance fund that is continuous for 25 years. I think that is the time frame that they have to identify. But in the meantime, there's a lot of work that can be done, and identifying the access has been what's been in the news, and I think you and I have been chatting about.
There are two sides to this, correct?
Sure.
There's one side that wants, well, I'll let you explain because I've read that there are two sides and both sides are passionate about their positions. So tell us about both sides.
Okay, so let me try to be as succinct as possible, but there are two sides to this. So getting back to the access on the Fresno side, there is an access point over by the 41 Bridge.
Okay.
That's there, and that's not what's in debate at this point.
So I want to stop you again. So I, as a member of the public, can have access off the 41 Bridge, no problem.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then there is a road that comes through a neighborhood that is called Riverview. Okay. And it comes off of a very busy street called Audubon, which is growing in congestion.
Oh, I'm very familiar with Audubon. There's a loop there, correct?
Yeah.
Not too far from Woodward Park.
Correct.
There's traffic on that street.
I got to tell you, it's getting bad. And off of Audubon, there is a road called Del Mar. And that is the only road from Del Mar to Audubon that you can leave this development, and also a apartment complex of 180 units. So you have a lot of people living in this area with only one way of exiting out. And so when the plan came to light that they wanted, and when I say they, we're talking about the Parkway Trust, wanted to create an access point to bring more traffic through the neighborhood, down this road, down Audubon, into this neighborhood, the people that live there say, wait a minute, you're creating, now we are building a bottleneck. This is not a good idea. We should have access for pedestrians and cyclists and dog walkers and people with strollers, of course. But why do we want to bring in a lot of cars and horse trailers into this area when it only has one exit?
Okay, describe the area. I mean, because I'm familiar with that area, and I'll admit there are times I use Audubon to not go I'm probably the part of the problem.
Okay, well now we know what the problem is, Sevag.
You know, and in all honesty, there are times when there's so much traffic to get me to Blackstone, I go to Audubon, and that's like the shortcut. And if I'm doing it, I'm no genius. I bet you there are many others that are doing it as well. So this street that you're talking about, there's houses around? Like
there's
it's
houses on either side of it. You know, again, I think that it would be safe to say that probably in the 70s and 80s, a lot of what was envisioned was probably not well thought out, because congestion has been built into this situation, and it's unfortunate. Originally, and let me take one further step back into history, but originally, down on the river bottom, it was envisioned that there would be a large housing complex.
Okay.
And to feed into that housing complex, there were 4 major roads. Only one remains, and that's Riverview. The others were never developed because the housing project got canned for a variety of reasons. But you have this road called Riverview. And so, but simply because the road is there, and it's the only way to get out of this development area, it doesn't make sense to continue to encourage additional cars to come in. So when this came up, this is where the debate started. When this came up, the people most dramatically affected, which were the people living around Audubon and in this neighborhood, said, wait a minute, can't we find a better location for cars? So we were working with the city and the county, but mainly with the city, of course, and the city said, they looked at it, the city council looked at it back in 2013, and they said, oh, you're right, this is not a good idea. Let's try to move all of the car traffic down to Palm and Knees.
Okay.
Okay. And we'll keep Riverview for the few cars that can park up above, and then we'll just walk down. The other thing is, I should just say as a footnote, is that even if you go to Riverview, you don't get to the river. You only get to a pond.
See, I've never been there. So if I go there, what am I seeing? A pond and...
A pond that is actually growing a lot of algae, but that's a whole other issue that I don't want to get into. It's a pond. And if you want to actually get to the river from where the parking lot is envisioned at Riverview, you have to walk another 2,000 feet. So if you are physically disabled, if you're carrying a kayak, you've got another 2,000 feet to go before you can actually get to the river.
And do people know this? I hate to interrupt you again, but
I hope they do, because we're going to talk.
Yeah. Do people know this, that by going down, there's only so far you can get, and then you have to walk? Because, you know, I've gone to beaches where I get excited. We get to the beach, yay, we got an ice chest, the kids stuff, and then I have to walk, and I'm like, wait a minute. No one told me that I have this long walk.
Right.
So by the time we get to the beach, we're exhausted because of the long walk.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, you got to haul all the stuff back.
Right.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think that this has become such an emotional issue and so passionate. I don't feel that there has been a fair description of what's going on here. So that's why I so appreciate the opportunity to just try to explain in common language what's happening.
I think there is a lot of confusion out there with people that are not vested or not involved, because I've heard people say, oh, they just some people say, let them grant access, and then everybody has access to the river. And then the other side, I hear people say, wait a minute, what about the traffic and the property values? Because there's some people who think by allowing access, property values will go down.
Yes, and my focus has never been on property values. It has always been about traffic, congestion, and public safety. And those are serious issues that we need to address. And so just continuing what has happened, the proponents for Riverview have said, okay, well, first of all, there's a public road, and we should be able to use it. It will destroy a neighborhood to bring in cars from around a region through a neighborhood into this, and it won't even get them to the river. When the EIR, when the Environmental Impact Report was done, it was revealed that yes, if this happens, there will be significant traffic impacts, significant. So the recommendation was two things. We could put a roundabout there at Del Mar and Audubon, which will only take out 2 homes and a half of a yard. I don't know who's going to tell those property owners that.
Yeah.
Or they'll put in a traffic light. But here's the problem with just putting in you can't just put a traffic light in.
In the middle of a neighborhood.
In the middle of Audubon, because that will have to change Audubon altogether. Now you have to change the lane patterns. No one's talking about that, and no one has calculated what that cost would be.
Interesting.
And it's going to force cyclists to compete with cars that are parked in front of the homes on Audubon. And Sevag, every time a bicycle has to compete with a car, the cyclist loses. They do. And you're forcing them now into traffic.
It can create a very dangerous situation.
Exactly. It's a public safety issue.
So where are we now? Your group is part of the allowing access by people, but not vehicles.
Right. So what happened was this, just to kind of finish the story. So when this came out, we were concerned, advocated heavily to say, let's include Palmanese. Let's look at that corner because it's not too far away. Let's see if we can find access there. So access was examined. There was an unwilling landowner, so that eliminated one of the 2 options. And the city of Fresno said, okay, look, we agree that access for cars should be at Palmanese. We own a park, we own land, let's put it down there. But here is the challenge. Where are the cars going to park? So there was a parcel of land down there that had been in an option agreement with the Parkway Trust for 7 years. For 10 years, they only were supposed to exercise their option in 7. In 10, they still hadn't done anything with it. We went to the landowner and said, look, we have a chance to help create viable access to the river.
Right.
Working with the city, working with the county, and the landowner severed the agreement with the Parkway Trust, sold us the property of land. We said, okay, great. Our civic group came together and said, we will acquire this, we'll insure it, and we'll add it to the plan.
Wow, talk about getting involved and getting your hands on the project. I mean, it sounds fair.
But you know what? It made the Parkway Trust and their friends on the Conservancy Board very unhappy because it wasn't their plan. So, and it's unfortunate because the Parkway Trust has done so much good work.
Right.
And we are now at loggerheads with them. And it's tainted a lot of the good work that they've done, in my opinion.
So as we speak right now,
Yeah.
is there a final agreement, or is there a resolution, or are we still
Okay, well, let me tell you what happened. So in 2017, the Conservancy Board, who has the final say on all this, said, okay, we will agree to move forward on this Palmanese access neighbors, but you have to, we're going to give you benchmarks that you have to make reasonable progress towards within a year. And that includes buy the land and a number of things. And so, and in addition, just to be fair, it was, and you have to work in good faith with others, because what they didn't want to have happen is have us be kind of a shill and just try to kill things off. We really do want to have this project to move forward. We see the San Joaquin River as being a wonderful amenity. We want access, but we want to be able to develop it in a thoughtful way that can serve generations.
Right, right.
And so we worked very diligently with our other colleagues. We accomplished all of the benchmarks. As a matter of fact, halfway through the project last year, Sevag, the members of the Conservancy came back and said, you know what? The land that you bought, it's not going to serve enough need. We're going to need more parking. So we said, okay.
So even the land that you bought,
it wasn't going to be enough.
So
we bought 2 more lots.
So can you imagine the number of vehicles that were going to go through the neighborhood if that direction?
Exactly.
That tells me right there that once something gets approved here, there's going to be a lot of traffic.
There is going to be a lot of traffic. There's going to be a lot of traffic. So we bought 2 more parcels of land down there by the river and said, okay, we'll throw this in the mix. When you're ready to expand, these will be available. So what happened, the only benchmark that we weren't able to achieve was an agreement that we had to negotiate, but it was with an opposing member of the Conservancy Board. It was the Wildlife Conservation Fund or Board, and they didn't want this project to move forward in this way. And we were unsuccessful in completing the project. As a matter of fact, the director said that he wouldn't give it to his board unless there were additional agreements made. So there was no way for us to win.
What a complicated,
It is
question. And you know, I sensed that when I was following up on it, because this was one of those where it's like, the first article came out, I'm like, wow, okay, this is going to get interesting. And then the vote article came out, I'm like, wow, this is interesting. So what do you want our audience to know? What is your message to our audience members?
Okay, well, here is why the access at Palmanese makes the most sense for the community. It is at a commercial intersection. It has a traffic signal already. It isn't going to add additional congestion to Audubon, so friends can go ahead and drive down Audubon without adding additional traffic. It also is the only place that is at ground level that you can get both to the river and to the pond. And so it is the place where the city of Fresno has directed development, what their county has directed. I would just like people to know that our organization is really committed to providing access.
So you're not saying no.
Of course
we
not.
don't want access. You're not the one saying no, not in my backyard type of thing, not in our backyard. The property owners that own property along there are not saying no, we don't want anybody out there. Like there was a case at a beach in another town where the property owner didn't want anybody to have access. So this is not that. This is
no.
This access point that was suggested didn't make sense.
Right, for cars. For
people, we're good.
People were good. Dogs, cyclists, we're good. But we need to think about what the future holds. So currently, our organization holds almost 20 acres of land that could be used for parking down there. And when we presented all of this to the Conservancy Board earlier this month, January, they said no.
Interesting.
They said no. They knew it was going to set the project back several years, but they said no. We want to go back and revisit alternative 1. So where that stands, what happens now, I don't know.
So for people who don't know what's going on, and maybe like me, because this has really enlightened me on the topic, what advice would you give them? How can we actually see what's going on? Or is there a way that we can go and look at like palm and knees and figure out, how to get there?
Well, I think so. The challenge is this. I think that simply looking at a project doesn't tell the full story. I think that sometimes you look at something and it seems as though it's so simple and direct, but yet there are so many complicated layers you don't know that it is a little more complicated than you realize. I will give you that probably going through palm and knees is going to cost a bit more money to do because it's more of an engineering firm. And our organization hired an engineer to make sure it was viable.
So you all have, you've also spent some of your own money
oh my gosh.
to try to figure out a solution to this.
Well, yes, because you know what? It is, in this day and time, Sevag, it's too easy to throw rocks. It's too easy to say why something can't get done. The hard thing is to find
the solution
and get people willing to work together to do that. I really, really thought that we had achieved that, and it was very disappointing that we were rejected.
So we're running out of time this week, believe it or not. I could talk
wow.
to you for hours on this topic.
This did go by fast.
How can people find out more information, or do you accept phone calls to you so that they can learn what's going on?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So if people want to, I think probably the best thing to do is to send me an email. Let's start there. So my email address is Kristine Walter at Comcast.net, and it's spelled KRISTINE WALTER at Comcast.net. And I'm happy to answer questions. There will be additional meetings going on. I know that we're going to have another public meeting to let people know what's happening. All the testimony has already taken place, so there isn't too much more that can be done at this point, but we'll see what happens, and I'm happy to keep you informed.
Please do, and such an interesting topic. It's such an interesting topic.
Well, let's see if we can all work together to bring something great.
Let's bring
something great to our community.
Great way to end, Kristine. Always a pleasure.
Thank
I
you.
want you to know that I watched you on your
so
show.
Sweet.
I watched you when you had a show like this on Comcast when you were doing it, and so exciting to now be the one to ask you the questions.
Yes, it's much easier asking the questions than answering.
On that note, that's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. I hope you learned a little bit more about river access and palm and knees versus Audubon Del Mar. Our guest has been Kristine Walter. She is a consultant, but in this project, she's a neighbor. Thank you to our volunteer crew that made this production and every production possible. Our directors, Paul Starcevic, making us look and sound good today. Thank you also to those listening to us on KFSR 90.7 FM and to those watching on Comcast 93 and AT&T 99, the CMAC channels. We're recording out of the beautiful CMAC studios in downtown Fresno. Till next time, we hope you enjoyed the program this week. Tune in next week to a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.